WWE does not care about what you think regarding their greediness. They want to milk every single penny out of your pocket. They will go to the lengths of banning watch parties at the local area just for you to spend thousands of dollars on a ticket. It's insane. They want you to pay for a quote-unquote premium product that does not even feel premium at all. Commercials after commercials after commercials. Hell, they don't even care about the types of sponsors that they have. Yo, this show is sponsored by Dude Wipes. They don't care about the embarrassment. They just want that cash. There's just nothing exciting right now in terms of the WWE product. I feel like we're not even on the road to WrestleMania. There's just nothing that piques my interest regarding WWE right now. Nothing.
The recognized symbol of excellence in sports entertainment.
Get stealing, woo, wheeling, dealing, limousine riding, jet flying, son of a gun. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Kurt Angle, yeah. Why Triple H, you son of a tell me why. And Tony Khan, this is also on you.
I am going to ruin wrestling.
Just get over it.
Mother Nature's a very, I should say, interesting thing, considering we were just dealt with this snowstorm, and it wasn't that long ago where, you know, we all had to, like, you know, shovel out all the snow that was burying our cars. Now, you know, just as when we were all recovering from that insanity that was the last snowstorm, we're dealt with another snowstorm. And we're basically right back to square one. You can call me a conspiracy theorist all you want. Clearly, Mother Nature has a personal beef with the East Coast. What is up, everybody? It is yours truly, Flamin' Ricker Gutierrez, on this Monday, February 23rd edition of the WrestleHavoc podcast. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this edition of the show. We got a lot of things to talk about on this edition of the WrestleHavoc podcast. Primarily, we're going to be talking about ticket sales, of course. WrestleMania 42 reportedly is selling at a slower pace than ever before. We're also going to be talking about the Elimination Chamber. If you guys do not know, there is a PLE taking place at the United Center in Chicago this coming Saturday. That is the Elimination Chamber, and that is, of course, the final pit stop before WrestleMania 42. Clearly, I completely forgot that we were on the road to WrestleMania 42, considering I'm not excited for WrestleMania whatsoever this year. That's because of the fact that I've been really disenfranchised with the WWE product for a while. But we got news on Elimination Chamber, and apparently TKO is using the same business tactics that they've been doing for Las Vegas, in which they are basically banning a lot of local businesses in the Chicago area from airing the Elimination Chamber PLE in order to boost ticket sales. Let's see how it goes for them in terms of that. But we're going to be talking about that. Plus, we're going to be talking about AJ Styles, Chris Jericho, AEW Revolution, which is going to be taking place in a couple of weeks. Plus, we're also going to be talking about briefly Ronda Rousey. Yes, Ronda Rousey is in the news, and she's going to be returning to MMA. Wait, we're talking about MMA in pro wrestling? In a pro wrestling podcast? Yes, we're briefly going to be talking about this because I think we should be talking about this because this is a big deal. But Ronda Rousey is going to be returning to MMA, not in the UFC, but for Most Valuable Promotions. If you guys do not know what Most Valuable Promotions is, it's basically Jake Paul's boxing promotion. And that was basically the promotion that promoted the Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson fight a couple of months ago. They're going to be diving deep into the MMA game. And Gina Carano is going to be fighting Ronda Rousey. Yes, Gina Carano. She hasn't fought since 2009. Gina Carano is going to be facing Ronda Rousey in this big MMA super fight promoted by MVP. So we're going to be talking about that as well right here on the WrestleHavoc podcast. But before we get into all this craziness, please make sure to like and subscribe to the WrestleHavoc podcast channel right here on YouTube, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And as the friggin' referee would say, ring, ring, ring that damn bell for more notifications. Also, if you guys are watching this podcast on WNN platforms, I thank you guys so much for watching me on those platforms as well. But without any further ado, let's get straight into talking about all things professional wrestling. And without any further ado, we're going to be starting this whole show talking about ticket sales, WrestleMania, Elimination Chamber, because WWE, or not really WWE, but I mean technically WWE, but really TKO as a whole is getting desperate as the weeks and weeks go closer to WrestleMania 42. So WrestleMania 42, as you guys know, it's basically the show's is dealing with a ticket sale crisis, if you really think about it. Now, the show is not selling horribly bad. Like, it's not like AEW levels of horrible, as you know. It's not AEW level of bad, but you know, in terms of WWE standards and the standards that TKO want in terms of how many tickets they want sold for this show, it's bad in their eyes. And it also is bad in a lot of wrestling fans' eyes, considering the fact that TKO has been pricing out fans for a while, ever since TKO took over WWE, I believe, in late 2023. They've slowly but surely started to outprice the entire fan base for these tickets. But WWE WrestleMania 42 tickets are selling at a slower pace. According to Wrestling Observer Newsletter's Dave Meltzer, WrestleMania tickets did not sell quickly, even with a 25% discount for 4 days over Valentine's Day weekend. Quote by Dave Meltzer, he stated this, and I quote, "There's been little new regarding WrestleMania at this point. No new matches have even been hinted at. Ticket sales are actually worse than what we had last week. Over Valentine's Day weekend, all seat prices were cut only for the weekend, meaning February 13th to February 16th. There appeared to be zero movement at the lower prices, and in fact, last week's number was a higher estimate than it was the case. The most recent report on ticket sales shows that the April 18th show sold 35,690 tickets, while the April 19th show sold 36,372 tickets. When you combine the numbers, that puts WrestleMania 42 down 19.3% from last year's pace. Prices for WrestleMania tickets remain high, with the entry price being at $264 for the Night 1 show and $276 for the April 19th show in Las Vegas. An anonymous source in WWE, considered a higher up in the company, had this remark for the Wrestling Observer, and they stated this, and I quote, "The audience is there. Are they inclined to pay $10 gazillion for tickets? To date, the only the CM Punk and Roman Reigns match has been confirmed for WrestleMania 42. Punk is defending the World Heavyweight title against Finn Balor at the Elimination Chamber on February 28th, so that could change, but it appears unlikely. On Monday, February 23rd, the episode of Raw will feature the Women's Royal Rumble winner, Liv Morgan, choosing her WrestleMania 42 opponent, likely being Stephanie Vaquer. More big matches are expected to be announced soon after the Elimination Chamber PLE on February 28th. Why am I mentioning WrestleMania? And, why am I mentioning it again? This is actually going to be the segue into our topic regarding the Elimination Chamber. You guys already know my stance about WrestleMania. Look, there's just no excitement about WrestleMania 42. There just isn't. There's no excitement about WrestleMania 42 whatsoever. If you look at the excitement going into WrestleMania 41 last year, there was some excitement there, but as the build for WrestleMania 41 was, going closer and closer, or headed closer to that said show last year, the hype started to die down. This year is a little different because there's just really no hype, around WrestleMania. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that the show is going to be taking place in Las Vegas for a second year in a row. And when WWE announced that WrestleMania 42 was going to be taking place in Las Vegas for a second year in a row, that pissed a lot of fans off. It pissed a lot of fans off, considering the fact that, of course, they know going in that WrestleMania tickets are going to be expensive. But if you look at the economy over in Las Vegas right now, tourism for Las Vegas is actually down this year compared to last year. And if you also look at it from, if you're bringing a whole family, for example, you're bringing your wife, your wife, and maybe 2 kids, you're probably spending well over $1,000 just for tickets alone. And that's not including hotels, travel, of course, food. I mean, Vegas is no dope. Like, Vegas is expensive. Vegas is expensive at the end of the day. And WWE and TKO expect people to pay at least almost maybe double the money that they were spending last year for WrestleMania. And people were complaining last year. What do you think is going to happen this year? What do you think is going to happen this year? Look, at the end of the day, WWE is paying the consequences for their own greed. But do you honestly care that people think that they're greedy? No, they don't care. They do not care at all, because at the end of the day, it's all about the dollars and the cents. It's not about the quality of the show, unfortunately. It's not about the fan experience. As much as they love to tout about the fan experience, they don't care about the fan experience. They just want your money, and that's it. They don't care about the fan experience whatsoever. But this is going to lead into our next topic, and our next topic is actually going to be about Elimination Chamber, which is actually kind of our first topic on this show, but whatever. Elimination Chamber, of course, is going to be taking place, of course, this Saturday at the United Center in Chicago, Illinois. Yes, the United Center. Yes, that same arena where CM Punk made his return to professional wrestling all those years ago, back in 2021. I can remember vividly where I was during that show. It was an unforgettable night, an amazing moment when CM Punk came back to professional wrestling. Well, as you guys all know, TKO have been doing very shady tactics in terms of Las Vegas by basically restricting a lot of local businesses 50 miles within Allegiant Stadium. And they are basically banning those small businesses from airing WrestleMania, even though they are paying a licensing fee to possibly air that show. WWE is basically doing the same thing with Elimination Chamber. So from what it looks like, this is going to be the norm for not just these big shows like WrestleMania or Elimination Chamber. This is going to be for every single WWE PLE. I'm reading this from the takedown on Sports Illustrated. New controversial WWE policy reportedly in place for Elimination Chamber. A new controversial WWE protocol that was put in place for WrestleMania 42 this April appears to be also in effect for the Elimination Chamber next weekend in Chicago, Illinois. Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select reported earlier this month that any venue within 50 miles of Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas will be unable to broadcast this year's Showcase of the Immortals, even if they pay a licensing fee. This practice essentially wipes out localized watch parties. The belief was that it was being done to increase ticket sales for the event, which are lagging behind where sales were for WrestleMania 41 in Las Vegas at this time last year. Furthermore, Sean Ross Sapp is now reporting that the new blackout policy is going to be in effect for the Elimination Chamber as well. A quote by Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful, he stated this, and I quote, "We are told that there are Elimination Chamber watch parties in the Chicago area also being blocked due to WWE's new blackout rules in an effort to increase ticket sales. Ticket information tracker WrestleTix released a new report on Elimination Chamber on Friday evening that showed 14,895 tickets for the event has been moved thus far. The current show is set up for 17,016, which leaves a little over 2,100 tickets still available now a week out from the show going live on ESPN. The high cost for tickets for WWE events has been a hot topic of conversation amongst wrestling fans recently. As of this writing, the cheapest seat available for the Elimination Chamber through Ticketmaster will cost you around $261. As you can imagine, news of the watch party blackouts for local markets have not been received well online. And a lot of people have been very, very, very upset. People need to understand about this, or really WWE needs to understand this, because I haven't personally gone to like watch parties at like local bars, which I really want to. I know AEW does these watch parties at like the local Dave and Buster's and all that stuff, but WWE primarily, there's always, any bar you go to, there's always watch parties, especially near the area of where that PLE is being held. This is only going to upset a lot of people. This is only going to upset a lot of people even further, and it's only going to backfire on WWE. Because what WWE is telling you right now, is, yeah, you had that cheaper option, but we're going to take it away because we want you to spend more money to go to our event, even though we are already outpricing you. They do not care. They do not care. They absolutely do not care whatsoever. Now, there was this tweet, and I'm actually reading this from the same article from the Takedown on Sports Illustrated. They actually posted a bunch of reactions on X regarding this whole new decision. Dante Toro, at Dante Ontech on X, stated this, and I quote, "So WWE is going to black out an ESPN product that they're making millions from local bars and restaurants so people can spend 10 times more of the money on tickets. It's concerning how greedy they've become." JPJ Loves Gaming on X stated this, and I quote, "WWE blacking out watch parties so people have to either spend money for the ESPN app, which, by the way, costs $30 a month, or buy their overpriced tickets because sales are low. Scum-ass behavior all around." Trev the Beast on X stated this, and I quote, "Someone in WWE saw how everyone hated MLB's blackout problem and said, 'Oh, why didn't we think of that?' Genuinely, some of the most incompetent people are in charge over there." Yeah, that's basically what is going on in the TKO realm. You want to know why tickets are down? You want to know why ticket sales are down? It's because of the fact that, number one, the product is just not as interesting. If anything, the product is more boring than ever. I can't, I'm going to be honest. I haven't watched a single Raw, a single SmackDown in full throughout the last couple of months. And the reason why is because of the fact that I just cannot fathom watching these shows in full. I just can't. I can't fathom watching these shows in full. I just cannot. I cannot bear. I cannot just sit through 2.5 hours of bull crap on a weekly basis, especially twice a week. Now, I watch Dynamite in full. I only watch Dynamite in full on a weekly basis because at least Dynamite, even though there's some crap on that show sometimes, at least the majority of the show is interesting. At least, and also I get great in-ring wrestling as well. WWE, on the other hand, it's just constant aura farming. It's just stuff that just doesn't really matter besides, the main event title picture, which I feel like is kind of lacking as well on WWE programming. But, there's really nothing interesting right now in terms of the WWE product. Nothing interesting whatsoever. We got CM Punk versus Roman Reigns as the main event of WrestleMania 42, which I believe is the right decision for the main event of WrestleMania 42, by the way. And I thought the segment between Roman and Punk was fantastic. But my biggest concern regarding the build for that match is Roman Reigns' schedule, because we all know Roman Reigns' schedule is very limited. Very, very, very limited. So how many appearances is Roman Reigns going to make throughout the majority of this build for this match that they're going to be having at WrestleMania? That's a big question. Everything else on the show is just not as interesting to me. There's nothing that piques my interest regarding the WWE product. I have been disenfranchised with the WWE product for months at this point. Ever since SummerSlam, and really starting around mid last year, I was just starting to slowly fade away from the WWE product. Why? Because again, they constantly tout about how successful they are, and it's starting to get annoying. The aura farming is absolutely insane. If you watch a WWE show and you can point out the amount of times they aura farm, oh my God, it's insane. They aura farm so much on those shows. I've never seen aura farming so much in my life than watching a WWE show. It's insane. We get great matches there and there. The talent is fantastic. It's just they don't feel important at all. And a lot of times when you watch these shows and you watch a talent that you love, you see them coming out to dead reactions and you're like, what's the point of watching this? You know what I'm saying? The product, in my opinion, in a way, is kind of at an all-time low. The entrances in WWE's mind are more important. Singing with the crowd is more important than the actual show itself, than, watching the actual match. Like, the entrances are more important than the matches themselves nowadays. That's what kind of sucks about WWE. And a year ago, I didn't say that. But now I'm starting to feel the effects of that, and I'm like, okay, I've seen this over and over and over again. Also, another issue that has been plaguing the WWE product is the fact that there's a lot of sameness. There's a lot of sameness in the product. Not only that, they do not know how to take risks. And I've been saying this for months. WWE does not know how to take risks in their product. You watch an AEW show, right? And I don't care what anybody says. You can call me an AEW fanboy all you want. Bro, I'll be the first one to tell you, I was AEW's biggest supporter from 2019 to like 2022. But I will be the first one to admit 2024 was their lowest point. I will say that because I'm honest. But when you watch an AEW show now and you look at the main event scene, I mean, the main event scene is just freaking stacked. Not only that, you get a bang for your buck. Not only attending their shows, because they're basically more than half, less than half of the price of an average WWE PLE, but you get more quality in the shows. When you watch a WWE premium live event, think about this. When you watch a premium live event, you see more advertisements. You see more advertisements on the show than the show itself. The PLEs, the premium live events, do not feel premium whatsoever. You're just watching commercial after commercial after commercial. And WWE wonders why that their ticket sales are slow. They wonder why. It's because all across the board, from the product standpoint to them at pricing their fans, to the show basically being one big giant commercial, everything about this is just like, it's not fun anymore. It's not fun anymore. It's repetitive and it's annoying. It's gotten so bad to the point where people are advocating for the return of Vince McMahon. It's gotten so point that it makes Vince McMahon look good. Which, by the way, his the body cam in video came out earlier this week about Vince McMahon's car accident. It was crazy, but that's another story for another time. But yeah, TKO's business tactics make Vince McMahon, who's a piece of garbage, look good. You must sink to a whole new low if you are wanting people to bring back Vince McMahon. Now, I am not advocating for the return of Vince McMahon. I'm not advocating for the return of Vince McMahon whatsoever, because he single-handedly destroyed his own product. And a lot of these people are constantly hating on Triple H, and trust me, there's a lot of things that you may not like about Triple H, but be honest with yourself. The product was so much better, especially those first few years when Triple H took the book. The product was leagues better than what Vince McMahon produced. I don't care what anybody says. Has it been better now? No, it hasn't. Now it's gone to the point where people are starting to wake up, and people are starting to basically, question Triple H's leadership. Now, I'm going to say this. Do I think all of this is Triple H's fault? No. Do we have to point some of the blame to Triple H? Yes. But at the same time, he has people above him. People need to understand that Triple H is only the head of creative. And the business model for WWE is vastly different than the business model 20 years ago. WWE basically relies on the brand name of WWE nowadays. That's it. Yes, there are draws. Yes, there are matches that, they're able to sell tickets for. But WWE relies heavily on the brand name of WWE, and that's how they've been so successful throughout the last couple of years. Also because of the fact that they've been, strong in storylines. A lot that has a large portion of that as well. But WWE relies on the brand name of WWE, and that can only take you so far. Again, these premium live events are basically a living commercial. commercials after commercials after commercial it's absolutely ridiculous. Paying $30 for number one, if you watch these pay-per-views on ESPN or if you watch these pay-per-views on Netflix internationally, it's basically the same thing. On ESPN, you get pay-per-views constantly. And on Netflix, you're basically, there's just a big-ass gap in between the matches because they barely give you any matches for these shows, and it's starting to become more and more and more noticeable. 4 matches on a card, like, when it was NXT, when NXT had their takeover shows, they only had like 4 to 5 matches on a card. But those were matches that mattered. You know what I'm saying? And I'm still an advocate for that amount for a PLE, but when these matches like just make you not care, I mean, what's the point of really caring? WWE gives you less for a premium product. That's the problem. They give you less for a premium product. Everything about this is crazy. The fact that WWE are basically exposing themselves for the greedy people that they are and not care and actually want to penalize you, the consumer. They want to penalize you for not wanting to spend an enormous amount of money is baffling to me. They're doing this in Vegas, they're doing this for Chicago, and they're going to do this for all of their events. It's bullcrap. And with all due respect, for lack of a better term, it's bullshit. Yeah, I said it. It's bullshit. WWE, TKO, they are punishing you, the consumer. They are punishing you, the consumer, for not wanting to spend thousands of dollars on one ticket. For a show that is supposed to be premium, but it really isn't premium in reality. That's the state of WWE in 2026. Mic drop. All right, moving on with our next topic. Let's talk about AJ Styles. AJ Styles. Well, as you guys all know, AJ Styles has basically a tribute tomorrow night on Raw, and a lot of people were very interested as to what this might be. But Mike Johnson of PW Insider reported last week that WWE attempted to sign Styles to a contract extension prior to the Royal Rumble, but the two sides cannot agree on terms. There have now been 2 interesting developments since that report came out. The first was Monday's announcement that WWE will be hosting a celebration for Styles during the February 23rd edition of WWE Raw in Atlanta, Georgia. Now, Mike Johnson is reporting that AJ Styles was spotted on Wednesday at the WWE Performance Center in Orlando, Florida. What's going on here? I have no idea. Brian Alvarez was saying that all talent from Raw and SmackDown are going to be at this show. Some people are speculating that there could possibly be some sort of match regarding AJ Styles at WrestleMania. I do not think that's going to be the case. I think this is going to be just a normal, flat out, tribute to AJ Styles. AJ Styles is maybe most likely going to cut a promo in person and, basically say goodbye to the WWE audience. That's what I think. Because there's still hope that AJ Styles could have his own independent retirement tour outside of WWE, which I still believe is going to happen. I don't think the match with Gunther was his last match. I just cannot fathom AJ Styles' last match being in Saudi Arabia. I can't see that being the case, but that's just me. But in terms of this tribute show, AJ Styles was spotted at the Performance Center, so we're going to have to wait and see what happens tomorrow night on Raw, but very interesting, very interesting. AJ Styles, to my knowledge, has not signed an extension with WWE, nor do I think he's going to sign an extension. I may be totally wrong, but we're going to have to wait and see. Very interesting development regarding AJ Styles. Elimination Chamber. Yes, Elimination Chamber. We're going to be talking about Elimination Chamber once again. Elimination Chamber is going to be taking place this Saturday, February 28th, from the United Center in Chicago, Illinois. Of course, that was the same arena as I stated earlier in this podcast. It was the same arena in which CM Punk returned to professional wrestling. And the card is looking, it's not a bad card, but again, I'm not as excited for this show as I am for Revolution. Revolution, if you compare this card to Revolution, with the matches that they already announced, like Revolution looks like the better show in my opinion. But we're going to do a quick rundown of the match card. We got the men's Elimination Chamber match. We got Randy Orton versus LA Knight versus Cody Rhodes versus Trick Williams versus Javon Evans versus one more wrestler to be determined. And honestly, I genuinely believe Cody Rhodes is definitely going to win this match. There's no brains about it. He's going to win. We got the women's Elimination Chamber match. We got Tiffany Stratton, Rhea Ripley, Alexa Bliss, Asuka, Kiana James, and one more wrestler to be determined. And we got the two title matches on this show. We got the World Heavyweight title match consisting of CM Punk versus Finn Balor. Newsflash, Finn Balor is not, I repeat, he is not going to win the World Heavyweight Championship because from a business standpoint, it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I like Finn Balor, but he's not going to win, and he's not going to beat CM Punk. CM Punk is going to retain the title and go into WrestleMania against Roman Reigns, because from a money standpoint, that's the bigger match than Roman Reigns versus Finn Balor. WWE, I love Finn Balor. He's great, but he's not going to win. Do I think Finn Balor is going to return as the Demon? A lot of people are speculating that he might return as the Demon. I do not know. I hope he does. But most likely what we're going to be seeing is some involvement with the Judgment Day. And if the rumors are true, we're probably going to be getting Finn Balor versus Dominic Mysterio for the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania, which would be a great match to say the least. We got the women's Intercontinental title match we got the women's Intercontinental title on the line as Becky Lynch will be taking on AJ Lee. So basically CM Punk and AJ Lee, two Chicago natives, are headlining this show, obviously. But yeah, man, we got this match taking place. I honestly do not know who's going to be winning this match. Part of me really wants AJ Lee to win. I'm going to be honest. And look, I like AJ Lee. I think she's great, but her run ever since returning to WWE, in my opinion, has been disastrous. Like, has been disastrous. Like, she's in and out of television. She's barely there, and it's just been pretty disappointing for me, man. I expected a lot more, and they really just booked her return for the moment of her return. I feel like WWE really had no follow-up in terms of AJ Lee's return to WWE. That's just me, though. I may be totally wrong, but I really haven't been that impressed with AJ Lee, and I like AJ Lee, but I really haven't been impressed with her recent run as of late in WWE. But that's the card for the Elimination Chamber. We only got 4 matches on this show. We're gonna get more. We're gonna get more commercials than matches on this show. Be prepared, because it's gonna be a sight to see, and I don't mean that in a good way, but that is the Elimination Chamber for y'all. Yeah, it's going to be taking place this Saturday, February 28th at the United Center in Chicago, Illinois. This is the WrestleHavoc podcast on Monday, February 23rd, 2026. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this edition of the podcast. We've got a lot more things to talk about on this edition of the show. Also, thank you guys so much for watching me on WNN platforms, whether that is on YouTube or on Facebook as well, or if you guys are watching me on the WrestleHavoc podcast, thank you, on the WrestleHavoc podcast channel. Sorry if I'm mixing up my words a little bit, my apologies. I was just mad tired throughout the entirety of Sunday. And when I say tired, I was tired. So if I'm mixing up my words, I deeply apologize. But thank you guys so much. If you guys are watching me on the WrestleHavoc podcast channel, I thank you guys so much for watching me as well on that channel. And plus, be on the lookout for more clips on the WrestleHavoc podcast channel. I upload clips almost daily on that channel, so be on the lookout for more clips on that channel as well. All right, let's talk about AEW Revolution. Yes, AEW Revolution, a pay-per-view that I'm actually looking forward to. Yes, I'm looking forward more to AEW Revolution than I am not only the Elimination Chamber, but WrestleMania 42. Yeah, because, I mean, from the main event scene that we have been seeing in AEW throughout the last couple of weeks, I mean, the main event scene has been just stacked. Now, is AEW a perfect product? No, but clearly they have improved from where they were even last year. But we got the match card so far for AEW Revolution. Revolution is going to be taking place in the same arena that Revolution took place last year at the Crypto.com Arena, or as I like to call it, the Staples Center, because I personally love calling it the Staples Center, the same arena that held WrestleMania 21 all the way back in 2005. But we got AEW Revolution taking place on Sunday, March 15th. And we got 3 matches officially announced. We got Jon Moxley taking on Konosuke Takeshita with a no time limit stipulation. So there's going to be no time limit. Normally for the Continental title, there is a time limit stipulation, but in this case, there is going to be no time limit because, of course, they wrestled a couple of weeks ago at Grand Slam Australia, which led to a time limit draw. So this match, we got the rematch. We got Jon Moxley defending his title against Konosuke Takeshita. I think this is going to be a great match. I think this is the match where Takeshita takes the belt off of Jon Moxley. I say that because AEW's really been holding off on the story between Okada and Takeshita, and we got that first match at World's End. It was not the best match, but we got that first match at World's End, and we all know Takeshita and Okada are capable of so much more, and we know guaranteed we're going to be getting more matches between both Takeshita and Okada. I do believe this is the match where Takeshita wins the Continental Championship, and we get right back on track in terms of the build for the second match between Okada and Takeshita, because we know Takeshita and Okada are capable of so much more, and we all know AEW does not want to hold that match for longer. So, like, clearly, we're going to be getting another Takeshita versus Okada match. But in terms of Moxley and Takeshita, they had a fantastic match at Grand Slam Australia, and I think they're going to have an even better match at Revolution. People need to understand the history of the Revolution show, aside from maybe last year. Last year, I feel like was like the weakest of the Revolution shows. But in terms of Revolution as a whole, Revolution is known for having some of the best matches in AEW history. Like, right off the top of my head, like the first Revolution, Hangman Page and Kenny Omega taking on the Young Bucks, one of the greatest tag team matches of all time. Of course, we had the Iron Man match between MJF and Bryan Danielson. I mean, Sting's retirement match, Will Ospreay versus Konosuke Takeshita. I mean, Revolution is known for having fantastic matches. CM Punk versus MJF in the dog collar match, Jon Moxley versus Bryan Danielson. A lot of great matches happened on this show, and from what it looks like, the card is looking fantastic so far. But that is the first match that I'm running down. The second match is FTR defending their AEW World Tag Team titles against the Young Bucks. Yes, we're getting another Young Bucks versus FTR match, which personally, I don't know what to think about that because I'm kind of through with both of them. But they're not capable. They're not capable. What am I talking about? They're capable of not having a bad match. I mean, they're capable of having great matches, and I guarantee you they're probably going to have a great match as well on this show. But in the main event, we're going to be getting Hangman Page. Of course, Hangman Page defeated Andrade El Idolo at Grand Slam Australia to win his number one contendership for the AEW World Championship, and MJF will be defending his title against Hangman Page in the main event of Revolution. This is a fantastic main event, and honestly, the main event that makes the most sense, not only from a business standpoint, but for also a storyline standpoint, considering last year, MJF and Hangman Page opened Revolution. They opened the same show in the same arena. So this is going to be their third encounter in almost a whole year. So that's going to be great to see. Of course, their first match since last year was at Revolution. And then they had their second match at Forbidden Door, and MJF never beat Hangman Adam Page. So, is this going to be the night where MJF is actually finally going to beat Hangman Page? But another thing we need to talk about is the stipulation. I talk about the stipulation because if you guys did not watch Dynamite this past Wednesday, MJF and Hangman Page had a phenomenal, and I know that term gets thrown around, especially on the right here at the WrestleHavoc studios. It gets thrown around constantly, but that segment that they had was phenomenal. And they mentioned something about a stipulation, and they talked about, hey, should this match be a Texas death match? What kind of match should this be? But MJF upped the ante and basically implying that if Hangman Page loses, he will never challenge for the AEW World Championship again. Or I believe Hangman stated that. So Hangman basically stated that and pulled a Cody Rhodes. I believe that was what happened. I got to go back and watch the segment, but if Hangman Page loses, so Hangman Page basically pulled a Cody Rhodes and stated, if he loses, he will never challenge for the AEW World Championship again. I don't know what to think about that. I know it sparked a lot of conversation on social media regarding Hangman Page's quote-unquote status with the company, saying, oh my God, he's going to go for WWE. I love how every time when somebody says something like that, says a stipulation like that, they're implying that they're going to be leaving the promotion. I mean, bro, you guys are the biggest marks I've ever seen in my freaking life. But in terms of that stipulation, there's a lot of ways that you can go around it. I don't think this is going to be Hangman Page's time to win back the AEW World title. I think Hangman Page is going to be, I think he's going to win back the title, but maybe, in a couple of months or maybe next year. I don't even know. But MJF is going to hold on to that title for a long period of time. I do not see AEW having MJF to drop that title because MJF's title run has been fantastic so far. I could even make the argument that his title run now is better than his first title run. And I loved his first title run, but now it's so much better considering all of the different possibilities that you have in terms of booking MJF, especially with all of the challengers that, AEW has in place for MJF. Again, the main event scene is stacked. You have people like, Hangman, Andrade. You got everybody going after MJF. Swerve, Kenny Omega. Swerve and Omega had their own beef on Dynamite this past Wednesday. Actually, the previous week before, they had a great segment. And then, of course, they had a one-on-one match on Dynamite in which Swerve basically pulled a lot of heel tactics and even basically put Aubrey Edwards in harm's way. A lot of heel tactics and actually beat Kenny Omega and then turned heel on Kenny Omega. So Swerve Strickland is once again the heel. Swerve Strickland is once again a heel, which is great, by the way. Swerve is a much better heel than he is a babyface. He's not a bad babyface, but he's a much better heel. He's a much better heel. And when it comes to this whole main event scene in AEW and Swerve being the heel, honestly, that's perfect for me, in my opinion. I have no problem with that. But Swerve is now a heel. So what's going to be happening? Do I think Hangman Page is going to win the AEW World Championship against MJF? No, I don't. Could we see Swerve cost Hangman Page the title? Some people were even speculating that Hangman Page could turn heel. I cannot see Hangman Page turning heel because in a way we've kind of been through Hangman Page being a heel in a sense when they were going through his redemption storyline. He was kind of in the middle, but he was going crazy. But why do you want to see Hangman Page as a heel when you got Swerve Strickland as the heel right there? Now, are you interested in another Hangman Page versus Swerve Strickland match? I don't know. But Swerve Strickland attacking Kenny Omega, who, by the way, is friends with Hangman Page, that could spark some interest right there. But could we see Swerve Strickland costing Hangman Page the world title? I definitely could see that. But we got Hangman Page versus MJF for the AEW World title at Revolution. We do not know what match type this is going to be, but from what it looks like, and considering, they've been mentioning this for a while, and they've been mentioning this in that promo segment that both MJF and Hangman Page had, this is most likely going to be a Texas death match. So, yeah, we're going to be getting a Texas death match, most likely between Hangman Page and MJF. We're actually going to be getting our answer this Wednesday on AEW Dynamite. But that is the card so far for AEW Revolution. Now, in terms of Kenny Omega, we need to talk about Kenny Omega because everybody is very curious about Kenny Omega's status for Revolution. Everybody thought Kenny Omega was going to be a part of this show. And considering where they were going with Swerve Strickland and Kenny Omega, everybody expected for there to be a Kenny Omega versus Swerve Strickland match, because considering, the fact that they were building towards some sort of match between the two, you would expect that match to take place at Revolution. But that match is not going to be taking place, considering most likely Kenny Omega is not going to be at the show. I'm reading this from F4WOnline.com. An appearance by Kenny Omega is still possible for AEW Revolution, but an agreement would need to be worked out for that to happen. Also, Omega is scheduled to be in Japan during the week of Revolution for the Capcom Cup 2026, an annual Street Fighter video game tournament. There's a contractual commitment for Omega to be at the tournament, but Dave Meltzer reported that Omega is trying to reach an agreement where he could return to the United States in time for Revolution on Sunday, March 15th. In a quote by Dave Meltzer, he stated this, and I quote, regarding Kenny Omega, as noted 2 weeks ago, he's under contract to be at the Capcom event at Sumo Hall in Tokyo from March 11th to March 15th. He is trying to make a deal where he can leave on March 14th and be on the pay-per-view. But as of right now, he still has the commitment, Meltzer wrote in the new issue of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. He said that there is a possibility he can make the date, but at this point, he didn't want to be in the position where he had to be on the show or where he would be teased or advertised in case he can't make it. Revolution is being held in Los Angeles at the Crypto.com Arena. A match between Omega and Swerve Strickland would have made sense for the pay-per-view if Omega were able to wrestle on the show. Instead, they faced off on Dynamite this week, with Strickland getting the win and laying out Omega and turning heel, basically writing off Kenny Omega from the show. So that's basically what's going on in terms of Kenny Omega. So if that is the case, it's understandable that AEW did what they did this past Wednesday by writing Kenny off the show. But if Kenny is trying to reach some sort of deal that he can work that Capcom show and then work Revolution, we're going to have to wait and see. But as of right now, he's not being advertised for AEW Revolution, which is a bummer because, again, I'm a big fan of Kenny Omega, but we're not going to be seeing him most likely for this show. All right. In terms of AEW, remember last week when we talked about Double or Nothing? Well, AEW themselves officially made the announcement. AEW Double or Nothing is officially going to be taking place on May 24th, 2026, and it's going to be taking place in New York. Yes, Queens, New York, at Louis Armstrong Stadium. In a quote by AEW, they stated this, and I quote, New York City. All Elite Wrestling is bringing one of its flagship events to the Big Apple with AEW Double or Nothing. The best spectacle in wrestling is coming to Louis Armstrong Stadium on Sunday, May 24th. Tickets go on sale March 9th at 10 a.m. Premium seating early access will be taking place on Tuesday, March 3rd at 10 a.m. Eastern. Pre-sales for that show will be on Thursday, March 5th at 10 a.m. Eastern through Sunday, March 8th at 11:59 Eastern. On sale for the actual tickets will be Monday, March 9th at 10 a.m. Eastern. Fans interested in early access pre-sale opportunities can register to become an AEW insider. So this is not nothing new. We talked about this last week. I believe Andrew Zarian broke the news last week that AEW was moving Double or Nothing to New York, and I'm very happy that they moved away from Las Vegas, considering, Las Vegas is such a dead market. I don't care what anybody says. Las Vegas is a dead market. I'm glad that AEW, starting last year, moved away from Las Vegas in terms of Double or Nothing because they were starting to see a slump in ticket sales regarding Double or Nothing. Not only that, Vegas is just so freaking expensive that fans are not willing to spend the money, not only for tickets, but also for travel for Las Vegas. So I'm glad that, they're going to have a pay-per-view at a tennis stadium in New York. And this whole New York pay-per-view for AEW has been rumored for a while. There was a lot of rumors about AEW having a major pay-per-view in the New York area. Some were stating Barclays Center. Some were stating even Madison Square Garden or even Arthur Ashe Stadium. Louis Armstrong Stadium is not Arthur Ashe Stadium. I know some people were getting confused about that. I even myself got confused, but it's not Arthur Ashe Stadium. Arthur Ashe Stadium is something completely different. It's still a tennis stadium, but I believe it's a slightly smaller stadium than, Arthur Ashe. Arthur Ashe is a slightly larger stadium than Louis Armstrong Stadium. Correct me if I'm wrong. But, there was a lot of reports about AEW having a pay-per-view in the New York area. Some people wanted it to be at Madison Square Garden, but I doubt they're going to run Madison Square Garden considering it's ridiculously expensive to run Madison Square Garden. But Louis Armstrong Stadium is perfect for me. I believe that venue holds roughly around 15 to 16,000 people. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not a bad venue for a show like Double or Nothing, man. Because let's be honest, the last couple of Double or Nothings, the ones, not the one like from 2024 to like 2022. I've always said this. 2022 to 2024, Double or Nothing was like the weakest pay-per-view in the entire AEW calendar year, considering the fact that the crowds in Las Vegas were just super dead. And that all changed last year with Double or Nothing in Phoenix, Arizona, and that ended up being one of the best pay-per-views of the year. And I have no doubt that Double or Nothing this year will be one of the best pay-per-views, not only in AEW for 2026, but for pro wrestling as a whole, man. AEW is definitely hitting on all cylinders, and I love to see it, man. I absolutely love to see it. All right. Actually, no, we're not done talking about AEW. I actually almost forgot. I had to talk about this topic right here. I almost forgot to talk about this, but Ronda Rousey. Yes, Ronda Rousey. We'll talk about Chris Jericho in our final topic, but Ronda Rousey. Yes, former UFC fighter, former WWE superstar, who had a disastrous last run in WWE, in my opinion. I did not like both of her runs, but her first run was much better than her second run. But Ronda Rousey and Gina Carano are in the news. Now, why am I talking about this? Because this is a big, big, big deal. Ronda Rousey versus Gina Carano super fight headlines Netflix's first MMA event. I am reading this press release from Netflix's official website. Ronda Rousey is back, and she's ready to shake up the world of combat sports. Today, Most Valuable Promotions, the promotion that brought you Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. Say what you want about that. Say what you want about that fight. I had my own opinions about that fight. I think that fight should never happened, but I will say you can't deny it was a success. Most Valuable Promotions and Netflix announced the mixed martial arts event that will be headlined by the return of former UFC champion and Olympic medalist Rowdy Ronda Rousey. And she will compete in her first fight in nearly a decade against fellow women's MMA pioneer Gina Carano, who, by the way, never fought in the UFC, but she is still a pioneer of women's MMA. She fought in promotions like Elite XC, Strike Force, all those promotions. The historic fight will take place on May 16th, marking Netflix's first ever live mixed martial arts broadcast and MVP's inaugural MMA event. The bout will be contested inside a hexagon cage. Now, this is actually very special to a lot of MMA fans, considering the hexagon cage was the same cage that Strikeforce used. Strikeforce used a hexagon cage. UFC used the octagon. Strikeforce used the hexagon. But this will be contested inside a hexagon, so that's why they mention it. And it will stream live globally on Netflix at no additional cost to subscribers. After the record-breaking success in boxing, we wanted our first MMA event to be truly legendary. Gabe Spitzer, Netflix VP of Sports, says, these are more than just athletes. They are generational stars, and having them headline our MMA debut at the Intuit Dome is a defining moment for all of us. Scroll on for everything you need to know about the competitors, what to expect, and a word directly from the fighters ahead of the can't miss night. And then, of course, they talk about, Ronda Rousey and Gina Carano and their history. So this is a big deal. This is a big deal considering the fact that Dana White himself, I believe, was kind of in talks with Ronda Rousey. I'm reading this from MMAfighting.com. Ronda Rousey is making her return to fighting for the first time in almost 10 years, but she won't be competing in the UFC. Instead, The former women's bantamweight champion partnered with Jake Paul's Most Valuable Promotions and Netflix to book a fight against Gina Carano scheduled for May 16th at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood, California. After the fight was announced, Rousey revealed that she initially reached out to UFC CEO Dana White about facing Carano in the octagon, but the two sides just couldn't come to an agreement. At the UFC Houston show on Saturday, White reacted to the news that Rousey was returning for the Carano fight, but she wasn't competing for the UFC. Dana stated this, and I quote, "Her and I have been talking about this since last year," White said about Rousey at the post-fight press conference. It just didn't work out, but I'm happy for her. Listen, me and Gina are in a really good place. We weren't at one point. I'm happy for both of them. After initially stating that she didn't strike a deal to return to the UFC, Rousey later claimed that it really came down to financial terms that she was being offered for the fight. Talks dated back to 2025 before the UFC reached a deal to move from ESPN to Paramount, which included the elimination of the pay-per-view model for the company. Rousey claimed that she was poised to make more money than she ever had before the agreement reached. She reached with White, but then the UFC wouldn't change to that guaranteed purse after the pay-per-view went away at the start of 2026. In a quote by Ronda Rousey, she stated this, and I quote, "It no longer made sense for me to go over there because they didn't want to pay us more money or the money that we deserved," Rousey said. "Because from the rest of the time, the deal they're going to have to pay everybody else more. So then I decided to look elsewhere. Elsewhere ended up being Paul's MVP, Most Valuable Promotions, who are now leading the charge for the show as Netflix plans to air an MMA card for the first time in history." Prior to the fight, Netflix actually pursued a broadcast deal with the UFC, but the streaming service was only interested in the bigger marquee pay-per-view cards, not the rest of the fight night lineup, which is basically what everybody's really interested in, and nobody really cares, at least the casual. I will say this. The hardcore MMA fan will watch all the fight nights, but the casual fan will only watch the numbered events. So Netflix was only interested in the numbered events. In the end, the UFC inked a $7.7 billion deal over the next 7 years to move to Paramount instead. So Rousey was definitely in talks with Dana White for some sort of fight to happen. What are my thoughts on this? This is huge. Regardless of what you think, look, Gina Carano hasn't fought well over 15 years. She hasn't fought in well over 15 years. Her last fight, I believe, was in 2009. And then after that, she moved over to Hollywood. Of course, she was in Deadpool. She was in The Mandalorian. Ronda Rousey, of course, had enormous success in MMA. And then after that, she moved to WWE. She had 2 runs in WWE. I believe her last run wasn't really that great, in my opinion. But in terms of this fight happening, look, I could come on here and easily criticize this and say, oh my God, these people are well past their prime. And you can very well say that. But they're around the same age time. They're almost around the same age. I mean, there's like only a couple age difference. In terms of, I believe there was, correct me if I'm wrong. Again, I'm not the biggest MMA fan, but I do keep tabs about some of the things that's going on. I believe there was some sort of weight class difference in terms of Ronda Rousey versus Gina Carano. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments down below. But in terms of this happening, you know, look, this is MVP's first MMA card, and this, I don't care what anybody says, you can crap on this all you want. This is arguably going to be, next to the UFC White House card, one of the biggest events in MMA this year alone, or in combat sports. I don't care what anybody says. This and the White House card are the 2 most important cards this year alone in 2026. This year alone in 2026. And we're getting a returning Ronda Rousey taking on a returning Gina Carano. And I don't care what anybody says, people are going to watch this. Regardless of how the fight is going to pan out, everybody's going to watch this. This is clearly going to get the eye of the casual fan. Now, what is the undercard going to look like for this? Because everybody's interested in this, but a lot of other people are interested in the undercard. Is it going to be just a bunch of amateur fights, or like we're going to get a stacked card? We do not know. But this is a big deal. This is a big deal. And, you know, as a casual MMA fan myself, I'm definitely going to be watching this. I'm definitely going to be watching this. I'm very interested in this. I'm a big Gina Carano fan. I loved Ronda Rousey's work in UFC. I mean, come on, man. You can't ask for something better. And also, this is happening. This is not happening in the UFC. This is happening outside of the UFC. And the UFC has become such a big monopoly. It's insane. So, some people are saying, this is competition for the UFC. Look, the UFC is never going away, and they're not going to have major competition. They're never going to have major competition, but this is a great alternative. This is a great alternative at the end of the day. So I'm happy for both women. I'm happy for Ronda Rousey, and I'm happy for Gina Carano, and I'm very excited for this. Say what you want about this, but I'm definitely excited. And say what you want about MVP. Look, they promoted the Jake Paul and Mike Tyson fight, and I had my opinions on that. I thought the fact that they brought back Mike Tyson, who was well past his prime, is ridiculous. I think Jake Paul fighting people well past their prime is very stupid. But at the same time, people watch those shows to watch Jake Paul get knocked out. And look, say what you want about those decisions being made. People watch. People watch. Just like people are going to watch this fight. So I had to mention that, but Ronda Rousey and Gina Carano are going to be fighting in an MMA cage, not in a boxing match, an MMA fight on May 16th on Netflix. This is going to be a big, big, big deal. Okay, and our final topic, we're going to be talking about Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho's AEW contract is said to be frozen, according to Dave Meltzer. I'm reading this from 411 Mania's website. As reported previously, word surfaced earlier this week that AEW has frozen the contract of the wrestler and former AEW World Champion Chris Jericho. Dave Meltzer commented on the development on today's edition of the Wrestling Observer Radio, noting that he's heard similar things about Jericho's AEW contract, believing that the news to likely be legitimate. According to the initial report by Fightful Select, Jericho's AEW contract was frozen, and it's believed that his deal was frozen when he took time off from AEW programming. Meltzer indicated that he's also heard things along those lines, noting that Jericho's contract being frozen is likely what happened. Meltzer indicated that AEW was able to freeze Jericho's contract and had more time due to the wrestler taking time off at different times during his latest deal. He stated on Jericho that he has taken long periods off at different times during this last deal, so I knew that they had the right to freeze the contract and tack on more time. I don't know that they did it. Meltzer noted that sources he reached out to have been quote-unquote silent on the issue, and nobody would deny to him that Fightful's report was untrue. He continued, and he said this, and I quote, "Obviously, I asked everyone, and silence is silence. I would be 95%, if not more, sure that if the report was untrue, I would know it was untrue very quickly. So therefore, I will go with the idea that it's true because nobody told me it was untrue." Meltzer added on Chris Jericho. So that probably holds off Jericho going to WWE for a period of time, but eventually he'll have the right to go, or maybe they can work something out. I do not know. Okay. In terms of Chris Jericho, yeah, we're not going to be seeing Chris Jericho for a long period of time. And look, I've been stating this constantly, ever since I've been doing this show, since the beginning of 2026. Look, Jericho's eventually going to return to WWE. I think there's no doubt about it. He's eventually going to return to WWE, but and look, I've stated that he was going to return at the Royal Rumble, and he didn't return to the Royal Rumble. I've stated a lot of things, but I still believe he will eventually return to the WWE once his contract is officially up. In terms of AEW freezing Chris Jericho's contract, I could definitely understand AEW's point. This is not a case in which, this is a wrestler who is not being utilized well, or not even being utilized on television, who asked for their release, and AEW not, granting that release. This is not a Ray Phoenix / Ricky Sainz / Ricky Starks situation. This is a very different situation. I could definitely understand AEW's point of view with this, because Chris Jericho did take a significant period of time off, especially throughout 2025. And AEW, with the value that they themselves see in Chris Jericho, me personally, I don't see a lot of value with Chris Jericho in AEW now, but AEW themselves do see that value in Chris Jericho. They do not want to not utilize Chris Jericho, especially with Chris Jericho being out for that amount of time and him having his contract up and then going to WWE. They don't want a situation like that. You know, they still want to utilize Chris Jericho in some capacity. And that's clearly what I see. Also, if you go on the AEW roster page, Chris Jericho's still on there. He's still on that roster page. So take that as you will, but Chris Jericho's going to be with AEW for a certain amount of time, depending on how long they've tackled time on his contract, or they've frozen his contract. Apparently, we're going to have to wait and see. But you know, eventually with Chris Jericho, when his contract eventually does come up, I do see him returning to WWE. Because I feel like, you know, let's be honest, WWE is really where Chris Jericho... I mean, look, everybody knew who Chris Jericho was before he got to the WWE, but a lot of his greatest work was in WWE. So I would see him returning to WWE in some way, shape, or form once his contract is officially up. But as of right now, he's not going to be returning to WWE any time soon. So yeah, that is the latest on Chris Jericho. And that was the WrestleHavoc podcast from Monday, February 23rd, 2026. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this edition of the show. We definitely talked about a lot of things on this edition of the WrestleHavoc podcast. And as always, please like, subscribe, comment down below, push that bell for notifications. I mean, look out for more videos right here on the WrestleHavoc podcast channel, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And as the friggin' referee would say, ring, ring, ring that damn bell for more notifications. And as always, it is yours truly, Flamin' Ricky DeRays, signing out. I'll see you guys all next week. Peace.